Is that the film rolling now?
It looks like we're on, Chair.
We are. Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's meeting of the Strategy and Resources Scrutiny Board. My name is Councillor Harland, Mary Harland, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. We continue to use Zoom to deliver remote committee meetings, and like our recent meetings, we'll be on that platform today. The meeting is being broadcast live on Leeds City Council YouTube channel, so a warm welcome to anybody tuning in through YouTube. We've got 4 items to consider today, with a major focus on finance in terms of both the in-year budget position through the Financial Health Monitoring Report and the proposed budget for 21-22 through the December Exec Board report. Local government faced a challenging budgetary position anyway following funding reduction in recent years, but the pandemic has made that position more difficult, and it's a testament to the work of officers in finance and more widely across the directorates that we continue to deliver a balanced budget position. We also have the performance report, which will enable us to make inquiries about how service under our remit are performing, and also to understand how COVID has impacted them. And lastly, we bring our second report on agile working and estate realisation, looking at how the council has speedily and effectively responded to COVID-19 and the plans that we have for the future. As always, we've got a number of guests in attendance to deal with any questions and present these items. We've got a variety of substantive and important items to discuss today, but we must also be mindful of timekeeping, so where appropriate, I may seek to move the agenda on if that becomes an issue. As always, we have a number, I've just done that. At this point, I'd like to invite each member of the board to formally introduce themselves, please. And I'll start with Gohar.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Councillor Gohar Almas from Beeston and Holbeck Ward. Thank you.
Peter.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Peter Carlill, Carverley and Farsley Ward.
Di.
Good morning, Councillor Diane Chapman from Rothwell Ward.
Sam Firth.
Good morning, Councillor Sam Firth, Harewood Ward.
Helen.
Good morning, everybody. Councillor Helen Hayden, Temple Newton Ward.
David.
Morning, Councillor David Jenkins, Killingbeck and Seacroft Ward.
Jim.
Good morning all, Councillor Jim McKenna, Barmy Ward, and Happy New Year to everybody if I haven't said it already.
And to you, Jim, and everybody else. Mirelle.
Good morning, Councillor Morel Mitchell, Kippax and Methley Ward.
Matthew.
Morning, Councillor Matthew Robinson, Harewood Ward.
And Simon.
Morning, Councillor Simon Steery, Pudsey Ward.
Thank you. And now our guest, please. Councillor Lewis.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor James Lewis, and I am one of the Deputy Leaders and Executive Board Member for Resources.
Neil.
Neil Evans, Director of Resources and Housing.
Victoria.
Victoria Bradshaw, Chief Financial Officer for the Council.
Eve, is Eve on yet? No. Graham.
Hi everyone, Graham Sefton from the Council's HR team. I'm here for the last item today.
And Chris Shillito. Are we there? You're on mute, Chris, if that's you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Oh, right, okay. Apologies for that. Yes, my name's Chris Shillito from the Intelligence and Policy Service, and I'm here for the performance update item.
Thanks for standing in at such short notice, Chris. It's really appreciated.
That's okay. I'm afraid I'm not overly familiar with this report, so I'll do as best I can.
Apologies, I'm having trouble with my screen. Okay, right. Moving on then to the first agenda. Can I ask before we start with the substantive items, can I ask our governance officer, even, Debbie Oldham, to take us through the first 5 items of business, please?
Thank you, Chair. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against the refusal of inspection of documents. Item 2, there are no exempt items. Item 3, there are no late items of business. Item 4, could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take silence that there are none. And agenda item 5, we've received no apologies. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, item number 6, the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 16th of November 2020, seems a long time ago. Do members accept these minutes as a true and accurate record? I'll assume correct unless otherwise indicated. Excellent. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? We have at various points in recent meetings been discussing a letter sent to the government asking for a long-term funding solution for adult social care, which was sent from both myself and Councillor Hayden as chair of the Adults Health and Active Lifestyle Board. This was originally sent in September and as yet we've not received a reply. So we have now issued a follow-up letter seeking that response, and we'll keep board members informed when we receive a reply and obviously look to share that with you. We have, as I say, sent a letter. We'll circulate that second letter to board members after this meeting at some time today. Okay, are there any other matters arising? Councillor Jenkins did mention a follow-up with Welcome to Yorkshire, and Rob and I will look to work that in either with a written report or a substantive report from in person, if that's okay, Councillor Jenkins? Okay. Okay, we'll now move on to our agenda item 7 on financial health monitoring for the current year. I know that Victoria and Neil and the wider finance team at the council have been working very hard to balance our budget and find new savings whilst also maintaining our important frontline services. So we thank you for your efforts in that regard. So Victoria, will you be leading on this item?
I will, Chair. Thank you.
Over to you.
So this is the financial health report for this financial year, 2020-21, and this covers the period up to October and forecasts from that point onwards to the end of the financial year. It's showing that it's a balanced position, which is an improvement on where we were last time we came to committee. And we've recognised in this report the cost of severance and the pension strain from letting people go on the early leavers initiative. So the previous gap that we reported to this committee was 31 million. With the severance and the pension strain, that increased to 47.3 million. And then there's been a number of proposals around how the council will balance that position. So we're using non-COVID savings that we've identified throughout the year, the salary savings through letting those staff go early, a use of reserves both from adult social care and another reserve, and then additional government funding. And that's enabled the council to balance the position for this financial year. The report also details the collection fund deficit and how that will be managed over a 3-year period, which government announced that we were able to do. The report also discusses the HRA and dedicated schools grant. In addition, the report goes through on the council tax and the business rates performance, which, as you'll know, has been challenging through this unprecedented time. So I think those are the main points from the report, Councillor Harland. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Neil, would you want to add anything at this time?
No, nothing at this moment. I'll take questions.
Councillor Lewis?
Again, Chair, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you. I've noticed Eve's now joined the meeting. Welcome, Eve. Do you want to introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, everybody. My name's Eva Roothouse. I'm the Chief Officer for Culture and Economy. Apologies for slight lateness. It's due to homeschooling this morning.
You're not the first to say that today, Eve. Welcome. Okay, we'll go to questions then. I'm not seeing any indication of questions. Is that right? Matthew?
For the sake of having some scrutiny and doing the meeting, doing the meeting service and function, I will ask a question. But again, it's related to the MRP. It wouldn't be a scrutiny committee meeting if I wasn't asking a question about the MRP position. I understand that there is an overspend of 28 million in the budget, and I wonder if the Chief Financial Officer could say a little bit more about that and perhaps cover in the next item how MRP intends to be addressed in the new budget as well. So it's a this year and a flag for the next item as well, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. The council currently uses capital receipts to fund some elements of the MRP amount that we need to provide for in the revenue account. The pressure for the MRP has been included in the reporting that we've done since the beginning of the year, and that has been mitigated through the measures that I mentioned previously around finding non-COVID savings, around the salary savings, the reserves, etc., and government funding. So we've mitigated the whole of the pressure, which includes the MRP pressure for this current financial year. I'll cover what we're doing in the future under the next item, if that's okay, Councillor Robinson. Thank you.
Okay. No more questions? Okay, thank you for that. So we are living through an unprecedented period, and obviously the virus in its nature is extremely unpredictable. Lockdowns do impact on our bottom line, and they increase expenditure and reduce income, as we know. So it's very challenging indeed, and you have our support as you continue to deal with this, Victoria and the team. Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to agenda item 8, which sticks with the finance theme, looking at our next financial year through the proposed budget for 2021-22 that was considered at the Exec Board meeting in December. The financial pressures brought about by COVID are obviously significant, with a total budget pressure facing the authority of 108.8 for the next financial year. This item follows consultation with us on budget items relevant to our remit following a number of working groups last year, which has been a bit different approach to the budget setting process and has enabled this board to have more input and provide feedback and comment to Exec Board, which I think we've all welcomed. The second composite report will be submitted to Exec Board in February following the one in December, taking account of consultation with all the council scrutiny boards over the course of this month. Victoria or Neil, can I hand over to you now for an introduction and then open up for questions on the next item?
Okay, thank you, Chair. So as you've said, this is the proposed budget for 2021-22, but it also details the provisional budgets for 2022-23 and 2023-24. And the reason for providing those provisional budgets is so that we've always got an eye on the future and what are the requirements going forward. So the report starts the consultation for the budget on 21-22. And as you've said, we've been to this committee a number of times on the proposals around balancing the budget. This report takes into consideration the spending review that was announced on the 25th of November, but subsequent to the report being issued, we did have the announcement on the 17th of December around the provisional settlement. We've reviewed that now and information has been provided to members, and we were 560,000 better than we'd been forecasting. But on the budget the size of the council, I think $500,000 was good forecasting on behalf of the council. So the report goes into a number of details. So it covers the spending review, it covers the economic forecasts, and it also covers around business rates and council tax assumptions. It also covers around the devolution deal and the gain share. So I think those are the main things that I was going to cover as a brief introductory introduction to the report because the details actually is in the report. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, any questions? Sam?
Thank you very much, Chair. I've got two questions, and one does relate to the previous item as well, but I'll come to that one second. Do you mind me asking, could you give us an update, please, in relation to any estimates around how this current lockdown situation may affect the budget, or will it not affect it at all?
Thank you. We have done an assumption around the forecasting. So each month we forecast that we lose income and we incur additional expenditure. We do get compensated for the loss of income through the government's scheme. So that's we receive 75 pence in the pound. That forecast will be included in the update that's going to Executive Board in February. The government has also announced that we get additional funding. And it equates to around 2.3 million each month that we do stay in lockdown. So that will be taken into consideration as well when we report to Executive Board in February. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Sam?
Thank you very much. And obviously, we wait and see what happens next in terms of the current situation and how that develops. The second question is in relation to a very small in terms of the overall budget, but still a major income for the council in relation to court fee income that was mentioned in the first proposal. I just want to ask, as courts are, yes, delayed, but not closed, as it says in the report, saying that they have remained closed, can you confirm anything around whether the council is still receiving income in relation to the courts and whether that is incorrect, that they have remained closed throughout the pandemic? I appreciate they're at a much lower service than what they were before, but it isn't that they've been closed all the way through.
I will have to come back to you, Councillor Firth, on that one, just to confirm the amounts of income that we've actually received from the courts in the year. There has been some virtual meetings that I understand of the courts, but I haven't got the information to at the moment around what that means for the council, but I will come back to you on that.
Is that okay, Sam?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Matthew?
Thanks, Chair. I've got a series of questions, so it might be best to come back to me and let others jump in if there are others. But in terms of a first question, I mentioned MRP under the first item. My understanding is that in the initial budget proposals for 21-22, there is a 60 million non-COVID pressure, the majority of which is related to MRP. Could you explain a little bit more about that and how we intend to tackle that and what MRP will look like in future years? And also in 21-22, I understand the cost of debt goes up to 34.6 million. I think the Scrutiny Board and those watching would be interested in that and understanding how those debt payments are going to be positioned in the future too.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Robinson. The MRP is within the council's budget, so the cost of MRP is taken into consideration. We were all aware that over the previous years we've had a holiday through MRP, which has come back into the budget, and that is where we're showing that, as you quite rightly say, the non-COVID pressures, the original 60 million includes that pressure of the MRP coming back in for 21-22. That is funded through the council managing a balanced budget position, so that is included in the 118 million. So the measures that we've taken as a council to recommend the budget to full council includes how we would mitigate that position. Over the course of the MTFS, the level of MRP slightly increases, but mainly contains consistent, and it's around about it starts around 56 million and it increases to 68 million over the course of this budget proposal. It was funded through some capital receipts, but we are actually coming off that through the medium-term financial strategy, and it will have an impact on revenue. So with the debt, I think every council has outstanding debt for the size of the asset base of the council. We do invest in our assets to maintain them at a certain level, and therefore we do have a requirement to borrow from those to maintain those assets and to invest in them. And therefore the revenue budget makes provision for that level of borrowing, and it's included in the medium-term financial strategy. I don't know if there's any further questions, Councillor Robinson, on those two.
I guess the follow-up would be to make the point that the spend on MRP is more than some service areas will be receiving in the future, which is probably worth highlighting in this meeting and making members aware of. What year would you say that MRP doesn't become a problem for the council, isn't a difficulty? And I know that's more the medium-term financial report rather than this initial budget proposal that's trying to plan ahead for next year's budget and beyond.
I think the holidays come to an end in 21-22. So from 22-23 onwards, budget assumes that level of MRP. What we did agree as part of Executive Board in September is that we would borrow to the amount that we repay off, so it wouldn't increase over that level at the moment. So any repayments that we make for MRP, we would then only borrow up to that level in the future, and that was something that was agreed at Executive Board. So we should maintain a constant level now of MRP. Okay, thank you.
I'll pause there, Chair, in case other members wish to come in. I'm glad MRP got a holiday because the rest of us didn't. Yeah.
There's no indication of anybody else, Matthew. Councillor Lewis, do you want to come in? Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just I want to pick up a couple of points about MRP, which I think is important for the board to understand. I think, first of all, the broad profile, the MRP was agreed by the full council in about 2016 by memory. It got cross-party approval at the time. The alternative to taking this approach would have been deep frontline service cuts over the last 4 years. And we've always recognised that the profile of borrowing, because we had made some overpayments on debt repayments up to 2016, that the profile of debt repayments would come back. So this is something that, like I say, when full council agreed our approach to MRP, we knew at the time, and we took that as an alternative. I mean, the option of properly funded local government from national government wasn't on the agenda in 2016, and then we took the decisions around MRP as an alternative to, like I say, quite severe cuts to the council's revenue budget and the services it's funds. So I think it's worth looking at MRP in the round to understand again why full council, without any opposition from other groups, took the decision in the first place. Obviously, we need to. We knew that the overpayments on debt wasn't going to fund our debt repayment forever, and clearly we have recognised in our medium-term financial planning for a number of years now that we'd have to start making those payments again. So I do think it's worth everybody understanding the context. Minimum revenue provision, I know we use the initials sometime. It is something that applies to, it is a national financial requirement around local government, and we have to pay a minimum amount of our debt off every year. It's set out in regulations that date from the 2000s. So I do think it's worth, we sometimes use MRP as a, like I say, as an acronym, but I think it's worth looking at the wider context of that, Chair.
Thank you. Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to keep dwelling on MRP. I'm sure it's a topic that everybody wants to talk about forever. I mean, it would be worth asking the question, though, of officers and the executive member. Would cuts then in previous years have mitigated more severe cuts now in 2020, 21, 22, and reduce the amount of staff that would have had to be reduced at this time, or on reflection, looking back?
Who wants to take that one?
Well, if I come in, I mean, just before I directly answer Councillor Robson, I think it is worth just picking up what Councillor Lewis said. It's not that MRP has somehow just appeared. We used to pay minimum revenue provision, and there was then an accounting judgment that we'd overpaid, and we could take a period where we weren't paying it, and now we have to pay it again. So it's not like it's a new issue. It used to be paid up to 2016. Now we're going to have to start paying it again. I mean, in terms of the strategy, in terms of paying our way into a medium-term financial strategy, we had a proposal this year to find that around about 58 million, I think it was, and we're probably, in terms of savings proposals that we bring forward something in the region of about 65 this year. So we would have been on track had it not been for what has hit us in relation to COVID. And clearly, if we had made further savings in a previous year, then those would have counted against what we've had to save this year. But in reality, that probably would have meant stuff going sooner rather than now. So in some sense, you know, to take Councillor Robinson's point, I don't think it was a question of not having to cut things. We would have just cut things sooner. And clearly, when it comes to, you know, difficult decisions, then they're hard political choices. But there are also, I think, in terms of transforming services, there are kind of lead-in times as well. So actually, we aren't going to be able to swallow all of the pressures of this year in a single year, because actually it does take time to actually bring things through. So we will be, you know, seeing further savings having to come through in 22, 23, 24 in particular, in order to kind of get ourselves into the sort of position that we want to have in terms of dealing with our MRP pressure through revenue rather than through for capital receipts, and getting ourselves into a position where we have a bit more in our reserve, because whilst we have always gone with very low reserves in this authority, the scale of this crisis has kind of shown that we need a bit more in.
Thank you, Neil. Matt?
Thank you. I think that's useful. Thanks, Neil. I appreciate it. And another line of questioning within the report, it mentions the business rates pool. And we talked about Welcome to Yorkshire receiving some of its grant from the business rates pool. We previously, in these meetings, talked about how decisions were made and the accountability that's in place. And I accept what officers had said, you know, that the governance processes had been followed. My understanding is that some grants to the business rates pool were made for an MIT scheme that Eve was involved with. I think it might be useful if Eve could say a little bit more about that, and if that will become, if there will be a bid to the business rates pool again this year. And then the second question being, how can members have oversight of the decisions made and what the grants are from the business rates pool?
Thanks, Matt. Eve, are you happy? I know you weren't here for this item, but are you happy to answer that question?
Yeah, that's fine. So just for the benefit of people that may not be familiar with MIT REAP and the acronym, MIT is Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a university in Boston, and REAP is the Regional Entrepreneurship Accelerator Programme, and Leeds participated in the programme over a sort of 2-year period and actually graduated from the programme itself in October of this year. I'll try not to take up too much time, Chair, but I'm mindful that people may be listening on YouTube and not understand without a little bit of explanation.
Please go into detail, Eve.
Yeah, the programme is about evaluating your innovation ecosystem, and through the programme you take a very structured approach of talking to entrepreneurs across the city directly about where they see the gaps in your innovation ecosystem. And then you work up your strategy and delivery plan about how you're going to accelerate the number of high potential entrepreneurs in your region. So the programme assisted with the development of that plan, and the specific allocation to the work of it around MIT through the business rates pool has allowed us to employ an individual to help begin the delivery of that plan, and also to procure a programme which will be starting fairly soon to support high potential entrepreneurs, which we hope to then repeat. It's called the Build programme, amongst other things. That programme has been, the work that we're doing has been really well received across Leeds and broader, so it's going very well. In terms of Councillor Robertson's question about further funding for that programme, we're in discussions around that forming part of the economic recovery plan for the whole region, not just for Leeds, with colleagues at WICA, and getting access potentially to some of the money that we will be getting through the devolution deal to support its further development and for us to be able to achieve our aspirations, because we all recognise that actually it's one component of supporting economic recovery, driving innovation and the numbers of high potential entrepreneurs that we have coming out of our region. So I hope that's sufficient explanation, Chair, and answers your questions, Councillor Robinson.
Matthew?
I think it's the idea of entrepreneurs receiving more help and helping each other, especially those who are, got high potential, is a really exciting proposition. And my hope is that more of this can be done with schools and younger people, school leavers as well, people who wanted to, start businesses, people who wanted to really innovate themselves and come forward with new generation businesses. And so I'm keen to hear more about this as we progress into the future. I guess the second question was about oversight for members and knowing what we're spending, it's getting value for money. So MIT is still in process, and we know that there's potential for big value for money in return for the investment in this. But what about the other schemes, and how can members have an oversight?
Chair, we have, sorry, I put my hand up, Chair. I can't find my hand up. Yeah, I don't want to put in. I think we have, I mean, we have discussed the decision making around the business rate pool. Again, just as a quick reminder, the business rates pool. So traditionally, business rates income has been split between us. I say traditionally, this is going back to about 2013, which I suppose, given how much change we've seen in recent years, it is a bit of a tradition. It's been split between us as a council and the money that we return to Whitehall for central government to spend. Central government gave us a very, very small share of their share to spend on economic development activity specifically. So it was money we either spent on money around economic development, or we returned to Westminster. There's been various pooling arrangements around it, and I think we've discussed this before. There's one where the leaders of the 5 West Yorkshire authorities have agreed disbursements from the business rates pool when we've pooled with other councils, and there's decisions we've made as a council ourselves. So I don't have a specific answer here about where MIT REIT was approved, but I'm sure that information can be provided to the board. And again, as you've touched on, Councillor Robinson and Eve did as well, this work is fed back, so we know where once the money has been correctly approved through the council's governance procedures, the outcomes are fed back. But again, I just underline, this was money we had a very limited time to spend it, and a very limited scope on what the money could be spent on. And I think I would agree with you, Councillor Robinson. This is the kind of work we do need to be doing as a council.
Thank you, James. Matthew?
I'll pause there because other members will be chomping at the bit to come in, Chair.
Nope, they're not. It's the Matthew Robinson show today.
I know. Sorry. The last question then is on adult social care reserves and what the position is with adult social care reserves at the moment.
Who wants to take that?
Could I just clarify in what perspective in relation to adult social care reserves? Councillor Robinson.
Are there ring-fenced reserves that are there for the 21-22 year, Victoria? And are there general reserves related to ASC? And
so adult social care have got some reserves which have been established for a specific purpose. Some of those is for if there was any unprecedented event. So therefore there will be a requirement to use some of those reserves in 21-22 to help balance the budget, because obviously the COVID-19 pandemic is an unprecedented situation that nobody could have foreseen, and therefore it is the right time to call on some of those reserves, and that is contained within the budget report. Okay, thank you.
And that's alongside the anticipated rise in ASC on council tax as well. So it's not, we're not using the reserves and not raising the council tax. We're doing both.
We will be. I mean, it's a decision for full council on the level of the adult social care precept, but we are proposing to use some reserves and raise the adult social care precept. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
It might be just worth me clarifying. So the budget assumes a 3% rise, but if council doesn't agree a 3% rise, then that will have to be taken out of the adult social care reserve.
And do we know what the reserve is at the moment, just to give members an idea?
The reserve level is around 17 million.
And 1% on council tax, and I'm trying to do my maths, is about
3.6.
3.6.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've prompted more questions now, Matthew. David.
Hi, yes, so my question was partly a comment, but also to get some feedback in a way. So it's 12.3 on the appendix of the budget proposals report, which covers essentially the right to buy. So I think we should report and recognise and comment on the fact that the reduction in the qualifying period is leading to potentially for 610 sales of council properties next year, and because of that, a loss of £2 million of income to the housing revenue account. Now in Wales, they've stopped the right to buy, and I think because we've got 23,000 on the waiting list, it does seem a retrograde step to still allow people the right to buy when potentially, with all the help to buy schemes that the government proposes, that people should go into the private market in a sense, rather than use the stock that has been funded through council taxpayers and so on. So I just wondered if we could just register that, and because of COVID and the pandemic, this is going to be a real issue for us for the future, because these 23,000 people, the numbers of properties that we are able to now produce as a council is about 1,000 a year, I think, but that's only in the last 2 years, after having been stopped from building council properties by the government. So it's a long-term issue, and I think we should try, maybe encourage the government to think again about the right to buy scheme. I don't think it's going to happen, but there we are.
Thank you, David. Neil, would you like to comment? I'm sure that's one probably for Councillor Anderson's board to.
Yeah. So, well, just a couple of things. So, actually, just to clarify for Councillor Jenkins, our plan is to build about 300 a year. So it doesn't actually meet what we're losing in terms of right to buy. I mean, I won't comment specifically on the rights and wrongs of all of right to buy. I mean, it's clearly a one which members will have different views on in terms of the political positions. We have, however, at times lobbied around some sort of technical changes, which I think actually all parties have signed up to. Councillor Carter and Councillor Galton signed a letter some time ago, which looked at two things actually. One is that actually the houses that we built should actually be protected from a right to buy discount until such time as debt has been dealt with. Otherwise, we find ourselves in a potential position in 15 years' time where there is existing debt on a property, and if we have to sell it at discount, we aren't able to cover that. And I think everybody thought that was sensible. And the other one, which is a bit more controversial, but I think everybody has seen some sense in this, is that the right to buy, if it was actually restricted, so that actually if people owned it, they could only sell it on to another owner occupier, that would actually have some benefits. So at the moment, quite a proportion of things which are bought are then subsequently let. And then what happens, particularly if they are let to people who are on benefit, is the government actually pays more in benefit to the private landlord than they would for the council house. So you get a situation where in a semi-detached house, which one of which is owned by the council, one of which is in subject to right to buy, the government is paying us around about £80 a week, and they're paying the private landlord £150 a week for the same property. In fact, it may well be that our property is better maintained. So actually a change of that sort, which kind of, in some senses, the spirit of right to buy was about enabling people to own their own home and live in it, would actually have quite a material impact upon the numbers being sold, and also actually control the benefit bill. So I think there are, taking aside the overall arguments on the politics of right to buy, there are probably some of these sort of technical changes which need to be made almost to kind of catch up with where we currently are.
Thanks for that, Neil. Very interesting. Sam.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I have to disagree with Councillor Jenkins, although we won't go into a political dogfight about the fact of the benefits of right to buy. But certainly there are technical changes that could be made in the future. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the mention in here, and particularly under adults and health, about a projected, higher than budgeted amount for staffing costs and pay reward. And I just wondered whether that was in relation to the fact that, well, if you could explain any further detail around why that is the case for the needs of the board.
I haven't got the detail, Councillor Firth, so if I come back to you on that, would that be okay?
Yeah, if we could go through the chair, that'd be fantastic. And but I would appreciate some information to understand why that is the case. I can assume why, but I'd appreciate the detail. And the other question I had was for in relation to Neil's portfolio, a bit similar to the situation, obviously talking about council stock. There's obviously a £1.5 million loss through the fact of loss of income due to void properties. I just wanted to ask whether he could give us a bit more meat on the bone about the situation, how it looked, and really explain a bit more detail, really how many properties were void, etc. over that period. Because I understand, obviously, I don't think we've stopped leasing at the moment, but it's obviously began, I believe, after the first lockdown again, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we've seen a rise of voids. To put it in perspective, we've been operating with incredibly low void levels this last few years, around about 0.7% of our stock, and we've seen that go up to around about 1.3. So we've gone up to latest around about 800 or so, 800 properties. There are sort of a couple of issues with it, really. There's clearly health and safety issues around having a group of staff kind of working in a void to actually repair it, because we'd work quite intensively, so some of those methods have kind of slowed things down. But there are also been issues around the people who actually have been kind of viewing the properties as well, and kind of arranging for that to be done in a kind of safe manner. So it's kind of it's come down a little bit and stabilized, I think, because we obviously in a period where we're taking extreme care around the welfare of our staff. I don't think we will see much reduction in it over the next couple of months, but equally I don't think that we'll be seeing much of an increase either. We'll probably have stabilised, but I hope, but in terms of returning to some sort of normal service, that we'd be able to kind of get ourselves back in shape within about a 3-month period. So that's kind of what the situation is. Clearly, there is huge demand for property, so there is in no sense a problem letting it. It's simply the mechanics of getting it done quickly.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, Sam?
Absolutely. Thank you, Neil, and thanks, Chair.
No problem. Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, but I think that all Scrutiny Board chairs and members have, welcomed the new approach to the budget setting process, and with more opportunity for scrutiny to have input into that process. And I've just wondered, are there plans for that to continue in future years? And I assume that's one for you, Councillor Lewis.
I was nodding, Chair. I think trying to do more. I mean, as you know, I think you said in your introduction, Chair, this has been an unprecedented year. But I think the value of bringing proposals forward for consideration early has been shown this year. And again, who knows where we will be next year? But I suspect, as an approach, it's something where we know we have a significant number of proposals. There is benefit to, and I'd certainly look to continue it.
Thank you, James. Helen.
Can I just echo what you said there, Councillor Harland and Councillor Lewis? I've actually, maybe enjoys the wrong word, but the whole, in terms of chairing my board, in terms of the budget, it's been a much more dynamic conversation, and our meeting last week was actually much more dynamic than in previous years in terms of discussing the budget and where we are. And I think that's because of the input that Scrutiny has had at an earlier level and at a deeper level as well. So I would echo that. And it's been a horrendous year, but there are some positives to take forward. And I think this is possibly a positive to take forward into future years. So, and can I just thank everybody involved with the budget, Councillor Lewis and all the officers. It's done an incredible job. I know with the adults and health budget, it's been incredibly well managed by the team there, and in very, very, very difficult times. So I just want to say a huge thank you, and you must be all exhausted, and I'm very, very grateful.
I think all members of the board would echo that sentiment. We can't thank you enough, and as Councillor Hayden says, I'm sure that you've had many, many sleepless nights. Just a final question from me. We've seen a significant reduction in staffing through the ELI and the removal of the vacant posts. And are we confident that the workloads can be adjusted to ensure that remaining staff are not overworked and have got the support that they need to do the job? And for you, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I won't pretend that this isn't going to cause some difficulty and some pressure. I think it would be unrealistic for us to say there won't be any pressure anywhere in the council. Nevertheless, each of the schemes around leaving people go has been accompanied by a business plan, which has shown how work will be picked up or how work can be prioritized in order to allow us to continue to deliver what we agree as a council are our priorities. So it's not been a kind of flimsy process. Each one has gone through a proper decision-making process with a group of officers outside the department itself, also making judgments about whether realistically we can let people go. Each of them has come as proposals in the budget proposals that you've seen, the appendices which have been drawn forward. So insofar as we can, we've tried to think these things through and make sure that we continue to deliver on, I said, the council's priorities. As I say, it would. I'm sure there will be instances where there will be pressure upon people, and we'll have to keep an eye on that and make adjustments as we go to make sure that people aren't completely overburdened and can't cope and with all the impacts that has on individuals.
Thank you, Neil. Okay, so thank you for all those questions. I'm not seeing any more being raised, so we'd like to formally put on record our thanks from the board and from us to Victoria and for the hard work that's been done and for pulling this budget together in the circumstances, which is a significant achievement. So thank you again. Okay, we'll now move on to item number 9, which is the performance report focusing on the 21 key performance indicators that fall under this board's remit. In terms of the Best Council plan, these focus on the best city priority, culture and the best council ambition, an efficient, enterprising and healthy organisation. I'll hand over to Chris now, who's standing in for Tim to introduce the paper. But can I ask if you've got any specific questions for culture? I believe that Eve has to leave shortly, so any questions after Chris's first? I'll let you come in if you want to say a little bit, Eve, after Chris, and then we'll move to questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just trying to get my camera and microphone to work at the same time, which doesn't seem to be possible. So I've just disappeared there. Yeah, thank you, Chair. You've just sort of done the main bit of introduction that I was going to cover there. I just wanted to point out the two appendices that go with this report. The first of them covers the indicators which were reported to CLT in November, which in general are the Q2 results where they're available, but there are a number of the indicators which are only available annually and some in arrears as well. So really we just need to look at that appendix to sort of get an overview of where everything stands there. And the second thing I just wanted to mention, and it's almost, you probably don't really need to mention it now, is that a significant number of these performance indicators have been affected by the coronavirus, particularly the first one in the report here, the culture sector. So it might be an appropriate time for me just to ask Eve if she wants to come in here and cover anything there. So thank you, Chair.
Eve?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Chris. Really, although we don't have the formal numbers coming through, we will when we get those numbers. Expect to see, obviously, those sales and attendance and events be significantly lower, given that for most of the financial year we've not been able to have our museums and galleries open to the public, and also we've not been able to run major events. So when the numbers do come through, they will be significantly lower. And I think it's probably worth the board being aware that we are working on the assumption that for a large part of the next financial year, we will have restrictions that will mean that it will be some time before we recover back to the visitor and event numbers that we've previously experienced. So the other thing for the board to note is probably the numbers of employed in creative industry sector. So obviously there's quite a lag on this in terms of the data. The numbers there are for 2018. Again, I think we probably ought to be concerned that we may see staff and those that are employed in the creative industry sector having to seek alternative employment in other sectors, and that's quite a big concern that we might lose talent from the sector into other areas. But as we kind of look for the data and the trends on that, we'll obviously keep the board updated in terms of the positioning. So kind of a lot of uncertainty, but we are working on the assumption that we will be able to start to reopen the museums and galleries and our other venues in some part of this coming financial year, if not before. So that's all I wanted to say, Chair, really.
Thank you, Eve. Yeah, we're really, really worrying times, aren't they, for that industry. Sam.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for that introduction from the officers as well. I just want to ask a particular question about the pulse survey results, particularly going towards Chris. I just want to ask a little bit more about, obviously, given the past year and the fact that 3 pulse surveys have taken place in May, June and October, there seems to have been a significant increase of nearly 10% in people feeling happy between the number 1 and number 2, May and June, and then by October, a vast increase bigger than decrease than before. I just want to ask whether we have any particular detail on whether this is with the roller coaster of obviously the riding the roller coaster of various different restrictions that have had to be put in place as the government has responded. But I just wanted to ask whether you have any further detail, meat on the bone, about anything that we could look into to see why this is changes so significantly between May, June, and then October.
I'm afraid I don't have any additional detail on that myself. I don't know if HR colleagues may be able to come in there with any.
Yes, Chris, I can pick that up. It's Graham Sefton here. Hi.
Sorry, Graham, go on.
Yeah, and it's detail included in the last item on the agenda today, where we look at more in detail around the wellbeing pulse survey results. But yes, Councillor, it is very much tracking that roller coaster as you describe over the past few months in terms of lockdown, relaxations during the summer months, and then a return to more stricter restrictions towards the end of the year. Yes, that is a fact, and I think naturally, you can understand how people's emotions and well-being has been affected by that. In terms of some of the reasons that sit behind that, the things that staff currently talk about in the latest October survey are around issues around missing contact, just generally that fear of more restrictions on the way, missing team, and also just general mental health concerns that people have. And also increasingly October, I think there was an extra layer on top of that in terms of the change across the organisation and the impact of some of the financial challenges we were facing, and some service changes which also were mentioned by staff as concerns.
Thanks for that, Graham. Neil, you wanted to come in?
Yes, and apologies, I'm going to have to leave the meeting in a moment. But I mean, a couple of things. Actually, it's been remarkable actually how I think morale has stood up. But Councillor Firth's quite right to point to the fact that the number of people who are unhappy has significantly increased. I think it did coincide pretty much with some of the announcements about bringing in further restrictions, and people saw that at the time of going into the long nights. It was kind of something which coincided with that, but just to give some assurance that where we see differences in parts of the organisation, we follow that up. So we have a bit more granular detail about how it's affecting different bits of the organisation, but also HR have been doing a very good job also in terms of actually supporting individuals. So lots of callbacks to individuals actually to talk about their well-being, and huge amounts of practical assistance in terms of actually helping people set up better in their own home and so forth as well. So it's not just been a isn't that interesting sort of exercise. There have been things which have followed through from it as well, and Graham could probably give you a little bit more of that in the last item. I do apologise, but I'm going to have to leave to attend another meeting.
No, that's fine, Neil.
Okay,
thank you
very
for coming.
much.
Nice to see you.
Goodbye.
Cheers, thank you. Sam, did you want to come back?
No, thank you, Chair. I'll probably cover it in the next one, but I think it's just interesting looking at if you take out the second pulse survey and you look between the first and the last, May and October, and you can see that obviously as the situation in COVID has continued, there has been a decrease, but also staff positive about support has slightly decreased as well. But it's certainly something to pick up in the last item.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, my question is to Eve. I've noticed that a lot of museums are going online. I've signed up for the National Gallery, who display a significant painting every Monday and talk about it. For those of us who's missing our culture, that seems really very much a way forward. I also know the Royal Armouries are online, and I just wonder, are we now? It may be in the report, but I have to say I'm having trouble with my printer, and I couldn't print it off. I should have really got Debbie to send me an agenda.
Jim, Eve's left the meeting. She's got another meeting to go to. Do you want to?
I heard, but I did hear that, Chair. But the last time I looked up, Eve was still there, so she's only just left.
Put the question in writing, and we'll see what she has to say.
I can do, yeah, I can do. But it seems to me that, as it was mentioned, the long dark nights that's coming, and a lot of time to fill, and people who do engage in culture, like we're all missing concerts in the town hall and art galleries and museums. It does seem to me that it's something that could be done easily. Lots of museums up and down the country are doing it. The Royal Armouries are doing it. So I don't really see why we shouldn't be able to do it without too much difficulty.
Yeah,
Thanks, Chair.
and you know, as we've said about people feeling a little bit worse this time around, I think people had that taste of freedom, didn't we? We had a little taste of freedom where things were semi-normal. But we can certainly ask Eve that question. Okay, I've got Peter and then Matt.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate we're in scrutiny, but I was going to welcome a couple of the figures in the report. Really, there's a couple. One, I was paying close attention to the summary of the workforce profile at Leeds, and I thought it was just very staggering how close to the census data our workforce is around all those comparators. So I think that's a real effort by the council to make sure that we obviously seek to represent the people of Leeds, but we do that as close as possible by having a workforce that is representative of the population of Leeds as well. The other thing I wanted to welcome, which we've always known is important, is the amount of spend the council has with local businesses and with SMEs and small businesses. And that's always important in bringing money and support and helping businesses and companies in this area. But at this time, that is incredibly helpful, the support that maybe a contract from ourselves could be to a local business that otherwise is struggling. So we've got increases there of up to, let me just get the report back up on my screen and jump through different things, sorry. 60% of expenditure going to small and medium-sized businesses and 52 being locally. I think that's that must be a huge help to local businesses and industries at this time, and I think is something to really welcome.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more, Peter. Thank you for that. Matt.
I'm afraid Peter stole my thunder on the SME stuff, so that's. But I join with him in welcoming that. I think it's really good for the city. It's really good for the region, and I know it's something that officers and Councillor Lewis have championed, and it's great to see progress on that. A question for Graham, if that's right, about Appendix 2, which is the breakdown in stats of the workforce. In the categories where people don't have to declare, so those who are not declared, 36% didn't declare sexual orientation, 31% didn't declare on religion, and 10% didn't declare on ethnicity. Now, I've no problem with anybody not declaring it. I think that it's perfectly entitled to do that. In fact, that's up to them. But how does that affect the council officers, HR, in terms of planning and the requirement for answering those questions? And the second question being around religion. Do you have a breakdown of religion as well? Because if I give an example, if we have a large amount of Muslim staff who observe Ramadan, that obviously may have implications for workforce at different times of the year. Similarly, Jewish festivals, Christian festivals and others. How does that affect the HR's work planning role?
Yeah, so in terms of the work that we've done as a council over the last few years to encourage people to declare their personal characteristics, there's a lot of work's gone into that. And obviously, as a council, we're really keen to make sure that we allow people to totally be themselves at work. And one way that we do that is by encouraging them to declare that characteristic. And as you say, Councillor Robinson, everyone's well within the right, aren't they, to say that they do or don't want to do that. But as a council, we've been actively encouraging it over the last couple of years, and we continue to do so. And what we do with that information is we use it to monitor the overall employee experience of all of those different groups, and we work closely with our staff networks too, to look not just at the numbers but also the real experience that people who come from each of those groups has whilst in our employment as a council. So we'll continue to push that over the coming months. In terms of, what was the second question, Councillor Robinson?
In terms of the breakdown in the religion category, so do you have a breakdown of where staff are, staff who are Christian, staff who are Muslim, staff who are Jewish?
Yeah, we under each of those headings, there's much more detail, right across the spectrum, and I'll be able to get you some further information on that, Councillor Robinson, at a future date, definitely.
And in terms of for workforce planning, do you find it has implications for different times of the year? Staff leave, for example, around religious holidays or festivals or events that are there, and how does the council plan for that through HR?
Yeah, and one of the things we do, and I hope you've seen this over the years, is that we actively promote as a council, all the religious and inclusion key dates across the year, and we're very mindful of that. In terms of things like Christmas leave, as you say, in terms of Ramadan, Eid, and we've got advice that we push through our managers in terms of how to manage, staff and also be fair and respectful to all the different things they need at different points in the year.
Thank you, Matt. Simon. Matt, did you want to come back, Matt?
No, thank you. That's everything.
Your
Thanks,
hands
Graham.
Look, that's all. Okay. Cheers, Simon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just want to go back to the pulse survey results. If you just look at the bottom, it says support calls made. So is these what employees think that their manager has called them? Because the numbers seem very, very low when Neil Evans said that there is a lot of calls going out to the staff, asking them how they're feeling. But, in pulse survey number 2, only 33% of employees felt that they've had a support call.
So I can come in on again. In terms of the numbers of callbacks, each time that we do a pulse survey, you'll see there's about 4,000 or 5,000 people that respond, and each time we ask if there's anybody that's really struggling, that there's this option of a callback to the HR team. So there's a dedicated HR line that offers to take those calls. So if somebody is really struggling, and potentially, if they haven't had contact with the manager or can't get contact with the manager for whatever reason, we offer that dedicated HR helpline as another route for people to share some of those concerns. So the numbers that you've seen there in terms of I think it's around 300 across all of the 3 pulse surveys that we've done. They're people reaching out to the dedicated HR helpline for further support, and we have a team there that can then signpost people through to the appropriate support and necessary help, and that might be through a range of agencies, but also could be about connecting people back through to their own teams and own managers for further support.
Thanks for clarifying. It just looks in the report that that's the only calls we've made to employees, but if they're the people that are asking for help, thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Sam, you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether it's something to cover further in the next item, but I just think it's a relevant point. Obviously, I know we're in unprecedented times and a lot of people have left due to the early leavers initiative, which obviously has come about because we need the savings necessary. I just wanted to ask whether there was any idea or view of taking a survey or even looking at exit interviews for those who have left, just generally looking at their experiences and whether that is anything that we can feed back generally into the council. It's something that I think generally either public or private sector can be really helpful going forward, but I appreciate that council services are under pressure for other means, but it might be something that could be considered in some sort of hybrid form going forward.
Should I come in on again?
Yes, please.
Councillor? Yeah, it's a really good point, and it's something that we are just relaunching at the moment to coincide with these increased numbers of people leaving the organisation. We've had exit interviews in place for a number of years in trial pilot areas across the council. But we appreciate with this more significant turnover of staff, it's a really important time, not just in terms of understanding the impact on the council of those that are leaving, but also it's an opportunity as well to collect some really helpful information about the overall experience that staff have had while they've been with us and how that changed, and particularly looking for signs of whether the reasons for people leaving now are linked to, increased workload pressures, whether it's just some of that good leaving, where people go on for promotion and new jobs. So we're actively tracking that at the moment. It's all linked in now to our leaver process. So as of now, anybody that leaves, they'll be contacted with an online survey to pick up that useful feedback about overall experience, but also the information about what potential skills and gaps they're leaving behind, and we can use that as part of our planning.
Chair, can I come back in?
You can.
Thank you for that, Graham. Really appreciate it. I just wanted to really say that I think it'd be certainly helpful in the next, when we look at pulse surveys going forward, how potentially there are a number of individuals who are leaving who are from senior level positions and also middle and lower level positions. But it'd be interesting to see whether that is impacted on the people below or above them in terms of workload in the next pulse survey. But really appreciate that answer, Graham. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands raised. The absence KPI is interesting and perhaps highlights the commitment of our workforce overall in 2019. On the 2019 figure, even with the impact of COVID and the obvious impact it's had on our workforce in terms of staff getting the virus. And I know mental health remains the biggest issue in terms of the reasons for absence. Are we planning any further initiatives to add to the good work that we've already done in this?
Sorry, come in again on that. I think there's a lot, Councillor Harland, in the last report on the agenda today, where you look at the really quite comprehensive range of support that's provided. Not necessarily just in terms of mental health, but wider wellbeing across the council. We've really worked hard, over the last 12 months to refresh our offer, make sure that all of the things that are available are reaching all staff frontline and those working at home. The mental health, things like the mental health first aid programme that we do, the Healthy Minds network that we have, they're all really active. You've got wellbeing champions that are working across teams. All of those things are really helping us to keep in touch with staff and provide the appropriate support around mental health. And let's not forget as well, that a really big and important push that we remain in place is around regular contact with line management and team. That's something that we really continue to push to support people's well-being generally and give them an opportunity to share if they are struggling.
I know that we'd started, things like that before the pandemic, in those halcyon days of getting into the lift in the Civic Hall, seeing them, promoted and things like that. But well done, carry on. Thank you. Sam, you wanted to come back?
Thanks, Chair. And further to the points that have been said about just generally trying to feed in, the one thing I was quite interesting is actually looking at the amount of people that filled out the survey. I know that we've been doing everything online recently, and so it might be putting off people from actually responding. But given the fact that percentage-wise, such a small amount really do actually fill out the survey compared to the wider, task workforce of the council, I just wondered whether there was anything in particular that could be done, or what is being done at the moment to try and improve the amount of people answering the pulse survey, given that we all do have more access to technology and also are, unfortunately, all working from home or out in the field.
Yeah, I guess there are a couple of strands to that. Firstly, we work hard prior to each survey going out, pulse survey, to encourage as many people to take that up as possible. And we also increasingly try and reach out to those frontline staff, and give options to complete the survey online, even when they don't have Leeds City Council IT account. So that's one thing that we do really promote. But also, in addition to the pulse survey, that's just one snapshot in time, isn't it, on a particular day or particular week in the year. In addition to that, the other main thing that we're doing at the moment is really pushing for all staff, so all 14,500 staff, to have a mid-year check-in conversation with their manager. I think we mentioned it last time, but that's now live. So between late November and the end of January, there's a really clear expectation that all staff will get the opportunity to talk about their well-being with their line manager. You know, and that's important because there's a lot of change happening at the moment, isn't there, across teams in terms of service reviews and financial challenges, but also the well-being aspect of handling COVID and workload pressures that people are facing. So I think at the most recent count, probably getting on for 40+% of people had those conversations. Bear in mind the window's open until the end of January, and if you remember on things like our annual appraisals, we've got a really good track record of people having those conversations up to 98%. So we're hoping for the same again in terms of the check-ins, and that really is the route in terms of addressing challenges, issues, and concerns at local level with individuals.
Thanks, Graham. Sam, you okay with that?
Thank you, Graham. Yeah, the only thing I would say is that one thing that we've got to do is, obviously, I know that the pulse surveys are one part of the arsenal to find out and understand what's happening, but we have to also feel that also maybe staff appraisals are not always the most appropriate way in which people feel they can raise concerns. I'm not saying that there are concerns, I'm just saying that they're, from my own experience and elsewhere, sometimes you may not want to speak with somebody that you work with every single day, and as a result, that having an opportunity to say that in another forum where it is either anonymized or generic is much more helpful. And the only concern I have is the fact that, yes, it's dropped by 4,000 in a few months. I appreciate we're all exhausted by using technology, but at the same time, when we are all using it more, there is also the counter argument. Potentially, we might be more likely to use it. And I just think that certainly, given the small amount that do the survey, is there anything that we could do extra to try and get them to fill out that form? Because ultimately, now more than ever, do we need to understand what problems are going on, because we aren't face to face as well. Thank you anyway.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments and another good discussion there. It's worth reiterating how well the staff have done to maintain our services throughout the last 9 months and continue to deliver vital services to our residents, and often having to quickly adapt to do so. I think it highlights the resilience of the organisation that we've been able to do that, and thanks again. Okay, we'll now move on to our final substantive item, which is the second report on the agile working and estate realisation, following a report that came to our November meeting. We had a really good discussion then, and I'm hopeful for more. We've covered some things in the previous item. So we'll be bringing a further report in February, which has more of a focus on our estate, before hopefully pulling together a draft inquiry report in March. How we support our staff as they work at home and how we ultimately adapt to this is over the long term, whilst continuing to meet our ambitions as an organisation, are really important issues. And of course, it's vital that our staff come on that journey with us. So I'll hand it over to Graham.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Harland. And I think we've already started to touch on, haven't we? You know, quite a bit of the detail list report in that conversation we've just had. But just to reiterate, when we last came to Scrutiny Board before Christmas, there was they asked to look in more detail at the latest wellbeing survey results, and we've shared that in the report today, and also to get a bit more detail around how kit had been distributed during lockdown, whether that be IT kit or furniture or anything that's going to support staff, particularly those the 8,000 plus who are working from home. So we've given those details around that in the report too. And lastly, the report sets out some of our plans going forward around how we're going to engage over the next month or two to particularly listen to our staff around and build a plan around future working from home arrangements and what that looks like. You know, whether when we were writing the report going into Christmas, we hinted that there might be some more severe restrictions on the way in terms of lockdown, because we could see what was happening down in London and the southeast. Unfortunately, that's played out and took us back to a position where we're more akin again to where we were in March of last year, with a really strong work from home message for all staff. We continue to support people to come into the workplace for well-being, productivity reasons, but that's very much an exception now. Vast majority of those 8,000 plus people are working from home. So the situation slightly changed in terms of we're now having to contend with, you know, the more strict lockdown, possibly into late March, April time, potentially. Who knows, you know, in terms of the trajectory that we're now going to follow. But nevertheless, you know, at some point we will come out of this, and it's still important to talk to our staff around what that new way of working looks like, and the future arrangements will be to get the balance, the really effective balance between spending time in the workplace and time at home, and what that looks like, making sure that both individuals, services and customers needs are all properly catered for. So I don't know how you want to handle in terms of conversations and questions in terms of the report. I think we've talked a lot about the wellbeing survey results, and yes, we do see a dip, you know, in October from previous surveys in terms of not just how happy people are feeling, but also how comfortable people are with the level of support that they've been receiving. But nevertheless, you know, overall, still a positive story in there, you know, in terms of, despite everything that's been thrown at our staff, you know, still 50% plus are happy, and 75% feel that they're getting the support that they need to do the jobs whilst working at home and beyond. So we're going to really redouble our efforts around the wellbeing work. And in the report, you see some of the commitments that have been laid out there. So continue to support to the most vulnerable staff, the check-ins that I've just mentioned, you know, taking place with all 14,500 staff between now and the end of January. And all teams have been asked to take a really good look at their own action plans around wellbeing support and use all the information that we've got available to us to come up with some concrete plans for the coming months. So that's it in terms of wellbeing, and happy to take any questions on that. In terms of the second aspect, the distribution of kit, you'll see there that over lockdown we've shared more than 13,000 pieces of kit with staff to work effectively at home. The cost of that in terms of buying new kit was just sort of £900,000, but 400,000 of that was what we're terming business as usual spend, i.e. On kit that were particularly digital kit that we would have provided anyway in any normal year. So the extra spend in terms of that delivering on that short-term need to get people up and running at home was probably in the region just over £500,000. Now all of that stands us in good stead in terms of that future working arrangement. And when I checked in with the IT guys most recently, they're pretty confident now that most people have got the kit that they need to be working at home longer term too. So we've been future-proofing our ability to rationalise the estate going forward, work from home where we need to, and not just contend with COVID, but come up with that longer-term balance too. Whilst we did buy new kit, you'll see in the report that we also recycled kit wherever possible, and we recycled laptops kit to the tune of around £1 million in value. So we're pleased that we were able to do that, and going forward, very much a feeling that any further kit that is required will be able to be recycled from within existing stock. So that's wellbeing and distribution of kit. And then going forward, lastly in the report, we outline towards the end of the report some of the really important considerations we're going to take in terms of getting that effective balance between staff spending more time spending time at home still, but spending time in the workplace too, and what that balance looks like, and how we make sure it's good for employees, but also good for teams, services, and customers too. So I appreciate any thoughts around that, from members around informing that work that we're now going to conduct in this, and the consultation we will do with staff. You'll note there's also opportunities we built in working groups, for example, to engage with our trade union colleagues to really look at the future plans going forward, and that's important for a number of reasons. One, obviously we want to get the overall approach right, but two, we're really keen as well to make sure that no one gets left behind, and as part of that work we'll be doing a full impact assessment on all staff to make sure that everybody is supported to work at home if need be, and we do get that balance between home and work right. So I'm going to stop there and take any questions.
Thank you, Graham. I thought it were a really good, informative report, and also lots of positives in there. I think we can be very proud of how we, coped straight off, but have continued to put staff wellbeing at the forefront of things. We're all struggling at different levels. We're all going through different things. But I think, as I say, some real positive things come out of this report. Can I just ask about the finance and the providing of kit? Those costs, is that just for employees only, or does that include what support members have asked for?
That's just employees only. There was a small number of school-based staff that we provided some kit to enable them to support online learning for kids across Leeds, but not for members, as far as I understand it. I'll check that. I'll double check, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Just interested. Helen.
Thank you, Chair. It's a really good report, and I'll just echo that. But the discrepancy between the two figures, and it's really high figure that those who feel supported, and I think that's testament to the work that people have done to support their teams. But there was in this, as Councillor Harlan said, even though you're supported, it's been very, very difficult to retain that positivity and that happiness level. So the fact that 50% of people feel happy, I think is incredible. I really, really do. Because I know for myself, and now that the children are not at school anymore, and how difficult, and especially that first 6 months, how difficult it really was for people. And it's very difficult to support people when you're not seeing them. Supporting people digitally, as we all know, is so the fact that 75% of people feel, and you can't just support it, is a real testament to the really great work. That's not to say that I don't want 100% of people, and we need to explore just why those 25% of people don't feel supported. But you can't. It's very difficult to substitute that ability to walk into an office and just have a 5-minute chat with a colleague about something, especially in the very, very kind of emotive work that is done around children's, especially in adults. There's no replication. I know for myself, if I'm in the Civic Hall and I bump into Councillor Harlan, there's nothing to replicate how that makes you feel, to have that just short conversation that helps you feel supported. And when you're at home by yourself, that's very, very difficult to replicate, even on the phone or digitally online. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for working so hard, but we do need to explore and try and get that figure of feeling supported. And if it doesn't translate into feeling happy, I think there's other things that is going on there, but as long as people feel supported, I think that's brilliant. Thank you, Chair.
Great comments there, Helen. Councillor Lewis, I was just going to ask you to come in, and you've indicated.
Thank you. I can't find my hand button. That's a training need that I have, is to find my hand button on my iPad.
As your ward colleague, I'll say nothing.
I was going to pick up again some of the points, and Councillor Hayden touched on them. Some of the some of the informal feedback I've got is again about that point is I think having to do everything online is a barrier. Some people feel, even if they're having regular contact and one-to-one with the managers, if they're doing it one-to-one through a screen, it's such a completely different experience. And again, there are some things, and obviously we were in lockdown again. I'm sure others councillors have experienced it. You sat at home on a wet Wednesday afternoon and suddenly you have a resident with in a bit of a crisis on the phone to you, and staff are dealing with that on a far more regular basis than I'm sure we are as councillors. So there is an element of some of the barriers at working from home and working online. We won't overcome those until we can start having time back in offices that we won't overcome. I do think, again, for Graham to pass on to HR colleagues, the support that staff have had, I think, has been really positive in trying to deal with some of these, things, and that's been helpful. But I do think in the current situation we do need to move towards a new way of working. But obviously, we know we've got at least another 2 months of working our current position, and obviously just redoubling our efforts to make sure people do feel supported. In work the staff are doing is vital.
Thank you, James. Before I bring our other ward colleague in, it's just even how we looked forward to enjoying our ward meetings in the local establishments, so we could get together and have a coffee and just to see one another, and it's massive. Marelle.
Already been covered, but I did drop out for technical reasons, so I might have missed something.
You're a little bit quiet, Marelle. Can you speak up a bit?
Sorry.
Sorry?
Yeah, I've had issues this morning with technical issues. It's about the supply of equipment, and I know that there's a vast amount of equipment that's gone out to people over the last few months. Has there been any sort of problems, timescales in people requesting equipment and then it being delivered, or has it run relatively smoothly considering the task in hand?
I think it's a good question. I think in the very early days towards March last year, we probably, and when we did our first pulse survey, there was a huge demand for kit, because everything could happen so fast. So for those first few weeks, we probably did have people who were at home and were doing the best with the equipment that they got, particularly furniture. But we quickly identified that, this was going to be a long-term need. And what we did was we established a system using a request process that we use, for quite a lot of IT kit that's well established, and that helped us quite quickly to really get on the front foot again. And we now, the requests were coming in and we were turning them around quite quickly. And that's been the case, throughout probably the last 2/3 of lockdown, that we've been able to respond really quickly to the needs that people have put forward. So in summary, probably a few delays right at the start when everything was very new to us, but got on the front foot and we've managed it well since.
You want to come back, Marelle?
No, that's great. Thank you. That's well done.
Sam.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again, Graham, for further questions there. Further to what Councillor Midgley said, I just wanted to ask you a little bit more about what you meant by refurbishment of laptops. Are they technology? Is it technology that we had in our offices that won't be there when we potentially can get back at some point, or is it other stock that potentially the council had from elsewhere?
It's a mix of two. I think it's probably a mix of redistributing current kit, that wasn't getting used within offices, and also I think we have a program where we recycle laptops once they come towards the end of their shelf life. So I think we spent some effort, and if you see in the report, I think we invested 144k to refurbish laptops that otherwise would have gone back to supplier and reissued them with, so for example, with new upgrades in there with the Windows 10 software added, and then we redistributed them as new kit, as it were, to people who needed them.
Happy with that, Sam?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting to understand really how much has come from the current stock that we've got in the past, but I appreciate that might be something great to go away with.
Do you want me to find you some more info on that? Can do.
It's just something that I think we've all hinted at over the last few months, really, in various meetings, and I think it'd just be interesting to know if you could put it through to the chair, and we go from there, really. Just really what that refurbishment has meant.
Yeah, okay, no problems.
Thanks for that.
Many thanks.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands raised. So, as I said in the introduction, these are really important issues, and I think Scrutiny has an important role to play to ensure that we get this right as an organisation. And there could be significant changes to how we work going forward in the coming years. So we will recover from COVID, but this should lead, or could lead, to new ways of working that are here to stay. So we'll return to this at our February meeting, if that's okay. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you
for attending, and thank you to all our guests for providing the answers and comments as always. Very interesting and informative. You're now free to go as we move on to our work schedule. Thanks, Graham. Thank you, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
You. Okay, item 10, over to you, Rob.
Thanks, Councillor Harland. Yeah, just quickly to go over the February meeting. So there are 4 items again. White Rose Energy update, which follows members' requests at previous meetings. There's a social value update on procurement, looking at how we enhance social value in procurement. There's also a BAME CLT action plan, and then there's the 3rd report of this inquiry, which Councillor Harland has just mentioned. Obviously, the exec board minutes are attached to the agenda, so if there are any other suggestions, I've obviously mindful of what Councillor Jenkins has said earlier regarding Welcome to Yorkshire, and I'll discuss that with Councillor Harland and come back to you, Councillor Jenkins. If there's anything else, obviously feel free to let us know and we can move forward with that. Okay, thank you.
Matthew.
Thanks, Chair. Rob, you mentioned social value in procurement. How is it being covered? Is it procurement across all departments? Is it just one officer's looking at the council's procurement? And is it procurement in other contracts? And by that, what I mean is I've got a discussion next week about social value around E-Law and the East Leeds Orbital Road and the work that Balfour Beatty are doing. And I'm trying to just gather how far the scope is of the item.
Yeah. My understanding of it is it would be across the council. I will touch base with the officers and pick that up as well with them, because I've been in touch with them already and just ensure that does feature. Obviously, it's about getting the apprentices and that added value for the city in there, and I don't see why it would be limited in any way. So I think it would feature cross council, but I will ensure that's dealt with. And if you want anything on E-Law specifically, I could look at that as well. I'll have a discussion with the officer, Councillor Robinson, and
I think that would be worthwhile, and obviously with the chair as well, because the item could go on forever. But I think where there are big schemes like E-Law, it would be useful for members to understand the social value that's coming with those schemes, or not, as the case may be.
Okay, we could perhaps look to get an example in there, Councillor Harland, maybe, if I can get that into the report. That's something we could look at, of a larger scheme.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Matt. Okay, right, thank you for everybody's comments and participation. Rob will pick things up that we've just covered. So the next meeting is on the 15th of February at 10:30. February, I know, my goodness. With a pre-meet at 10. So I look forward to seeing you all then, and it's been great to see you all this morning. Take care and stay safe.